Welcome back to my new video. As you have probably seen, I have bought the V2 roller and it came out of the box a little bit disappointing. I have talked to the retailer, he contacted Horizon Hobby for me, they contacted Arrma for me. I've sent them the video of everything that is wrong with the car, and Arrma said everything we see with what's wrong with the V2 is within production tolerance, which probably means that I am not the only one having these issues. So it's a little bit disappointing, but that won't stop me from driving the Limitless. So what's the plan? I'm going to take the car apart completely and then replace all the components that are not working properly, exchange them, rebuild the car, and then drive it. So step one is completely dismantling the car. So let's begin with that. So all the screws that are held in position with Loctite from factory, I heated them up with my soldering iron so that the Loctite will burn, melt a little bit, and it will come loose, and that way you can safely unscrew the screws without the risk of breaking the head of the screw. I have left out the differentials in this video. That is because I have a special dedicated video to the differentials, and there you can see step by step how I rebuild them. I had some issues, not issues, I had some, let's call it issues, with mounting the differentials back into the bulkhead. Because from factory I've put the bulkheads back together with the differentials inside. Didn't run that smooth, so I used the shims that Arrma provides with their cars, and I've mounted them in several different positions, but it didn't get the job done. It wasn't running smoothly. In the end, what I did was I used some shims on the pinion gear of the differential to pull it outwards a little bit, and that made the diffs run smoothly. So that is how I mounted it. For the rest of the rebuild, I have used the manual or the drawing, because for me the car is completely new. Never had an Arrma before, never had the Limitless before, obviously. So I don't really know how the car is put together. I took it apart completely in one sitting, everything all at once, so all the parts were in one big box, and then it is a puzzle to put it all back together. The whole car in its exploded view is on one paper, on one side, so the drawing is pretty small and they left out quite a few details. If you compare that to the exploded views of Traxxas, for example, they have put these dotted lines in between all the parts, so then you can see what goes where. Arrma doesn't do that, so that makes it a little bit more tricky to work using the drawing. That also meant that sometimes I put something together, feel it, or I look at it and it wasn't correct. So I had to take it apart, put it back together in another way. All in all, I worked around 9.5 hours on the Limitless to take it apart and put it back together completely. It's a few hours less than I had, for example, with the X-Max in the time-lapse video. But then again, I think the Arrma Limitless is built a little bit more simplified. But if I look at Arrma as a platform, I think they're all built more simplified than other brands of cars, especially compared to Traxxas. Because Arrma uses an aluminium chassis for its base and then puts everything on there. What you have is a bulkhead with a shock tower. You have the springs and the diffs in there, on there, with the arms, and then a few extra parts, but that's about it. The size of the arms, they will differ. The size of the diffs, they will differ. The size of the shocks. But for the rest, most of the Arrma cars are all built in a very similar way. Compare that to, for example, Traxxas, where almost every car is completely unique and just a few parts can be interchanged between different cars. They all have their unique chassis, they all have their unique arms, they all have their unique springs, well, almost all of them. The 1 in 10 cars all have the Ultra shocks, but all the other cars have their own shocks. Lately the TRX platform is a little bit more common. They have the TRX4, the 6, the Hauler. They are quite the same. Have a lot of interchangeable parts. But I think Arrma does that a better way. So if you know one car from Arrma, you will know how to build more cars. I don't want to say all of them, but it helps. Despite working only 9.5 hours on the car, it took me quite some time to rebuild the Limitless. I think it took me about 2.5 weeks to build it. I didn't have much time for the hobby. Sometimes that happens. But I am really glad it is put back together right now. As you have seen, I have taken the car apart completely and I did a complete and full rebuild. You maybe already have seen the video on how to rebuild the GP5 differentials. If so, then you know that both of them are filled with 20 million. The shocks, the only thing I did with it in the front and in the rear is fill them up a little bit, because from factory they were not completely full. if I compressed the shock, I could hear and feel there was a little bit of air inside. So I filled them up and that's it. In the front they were pretty stiff. If I would compare that to the stiffness of the slash, then these are a little bit stiffer. In the rear they are a little bit more soft, but I can give them more pre-spring. And I need to put this bad boy on tires and drive it to eventually see if I need to stiffen the shocks even more. So they are still stock. Then you have probably seen my video about my disappointment of the Limitless, how it came out of the box with all of its shortcomings. And about that I have contacted Arrma, or the reseller of the Limitless contacted Arrma about that. Arrma has seen the same video as you guys did, and they told me that everything on the Limitless was perfectly fine. This is how it was supposed to be designed. This is how it was supposed to be made. There was nothing wrong with the car. It is perfectly suitable to run at high speeds. Well, I beg to differ. I also told the reseller the same, and he concurred with me, and he wrote an email back. But then the good thing is that I live in the Netherlands. Everything Arrma or Losi related and a few other brands are all imported by Horizon Hobby. My reseller doesn't have direct contact with Arrma, but he has direct contact with Horizon Hobby, who imports all these vehicles, boats and the spare parts. Horizon Hobby was also the one that forwarded his email towards Arrma, and Horizon Hobby came clear and told the reseller that they would reimburse me for all the parts that were not okay. And yes, I have talked about the tires having flat spots, and yes, I have talked about the center drive shafts being crooked, but I can run with a crooked drive shaft. Well, not too crooked, but just a little bit. I have bought the GRP tires, so I'm not going to use the original tires. So they have sent me the bare minimum of parts that I needed to rebuild the car. The problem was that Arrma puts too much Loctite on these screws, or too strong. And I know why, because when you drive at high speeds you have vibrations, the screw can come loose and then you lose it, and when the drivetrain is disconnected, well, you don't want that at high speeds. So I understand from one side, but from the other side, well, the first screw or the pin that's in here that I wanted to disconnect, well, it broke, and so I needed a new drive cup, because I had to drill out the old screw. You can still see a little bit of the remains in there, so I had to drill it out. I thought that the center spool was also going to be damaged by drilling it out, so they have also sent me a new center spool, but I could reuse the old one. So this is spare. This drive cup is going in the trash. Then for some reason I asked for one drive cup, but they sent me 2 drive cups. Oh, okay, thank you for that. Then I've asked for these pins, but they were out of stock and were in back order. And the problem there is that it can take between 2 weeks and 3 months, or maybe even longer, before it is delivered. So what I did was, I took the pin that was on the spur gear and I put it in a drive cup, and in the spur gear I have put 2 grub screws. Then I asked for shims for the wheel hubs, and they have sent me Losi shims. Wait, shims are shims, no problem there, but they have sent the wrong diameter, so it wouldn't fit, so I didn't use these. Then the problem was that all the ball joints here, there, they were all with play. So they have sent me new ball joints, these two and 4 of these. I used this, I took it out of the bag, but the problem there was that I took it out of the bag and it still has play, because I also asked for new plastic parts, all the arms. It's one big set for different cars, so they send a lot of parts, so thank you for that. But the problem here is, this one is new, that it also has play. So this car came out of the box as per Arrma's production tolerances. And first I thought, well, maybe they made a mistake, and you know, we'll see, we'll get the spare parts, the new parts, and then it will be better. Well, it is not. That's unbelievable. But at least Arrma is consistent in the quality of their parts, so hooray for that. So what I did was I reused the old ones, because what's the point of taking the new ones out of the bag if the quality is the same or worse as the ones that I already have. So they are spare. Thank you Horizon for sending it. So I have some spare parts. Hopefully I won't crash the Limitless too hard. But to resolve the problem with the ball joints, I used rubber rings, O-rings, these small white ones, and I have put them over the ball joints, like so. And in this way, the rubber is going to lock up the pivot ball inside the plastic housing, and then there is no play. There's a little bit of movement in there. You can twist it, you can turn it, so it is not completely rigid. So this works, at least in theory. I've built it. It doesn't have any play, so it works. But now I have to test the durability of the car with the rubber rings that I've put in there. So as you can see here, there are 2 rubber rings. Underneath here there are 2 rubber rings. In here I have placed 1 rubber ring. In here I have placed a plastic bushing and some rings and shims on the pin that is running through, because it was too long. And now that I have placed some shims on here, I can squeeze the arm a little bit together so it doesn't have any play. So it doesn't have any play, but what you see here is flex. Flex is okay, play isn't. This can still move a little bit, and it can still compress, so no problems there. All the way in the back, over there, I have also placed a rubber ring, as you can see. On the other side I did exactly the same, on this side also. Then I have rebuilt, then I have put the bell crank mechanism back together, and what do you know? It goes from left to right and from right to left all the way without bumping into the bulkhead. I don't know. I mean, this is the drawing of the car, and it's all pretty small, and well, sometimes I have put the car or parts of the car together, and it was wrong. I had it upside down, or I switched left and right, like with the body posts. There were some other things that I had mounted in the wrong way, and then I had to take it apart and do it again. And because I don't know the car, I mean, this is my first Arrma, so I don't know the car, and I have to build it from drawing, and the drawing was not so accurate. So maybe I have put the steering mechanism together in an incorrect way. Not the Arrma way, but my way. Maybe. Who knows? Nobody knows. What I do know is that it works now. What also is the case with all the rubbers in the ball joints is that the steering mechanism is a little bit more resistant, but it is resistant in a continuous factor, so it runs smooth from the left all the way to the right. And when I put a 45 kilogram servo in there, which has a lot of torque, then it will pull through these rubber rings, and then that won't be a problem. Then you might have noticed that I have exchanged all the steel screws for stainless steel screws. And the reason why I did that is because I think it is a much nicer and cleaner look. What else did I do to the car? Oh yes, I have placed also some O-rings in the drive cup so that the drive shafts don't wiggle up and down so much. I have bought shims for the axles, and the Horizon Hobby told me that they were going to send me, but they were also in back order. So I've put shims in there and in there, also on the right side. And that's about it. That is what I did to the car to make it a decent roller. Okay, the differentials maybe were not necessary to put 20 million in there, but I think 10,000 is way too thin. They would have at least put 100,000 in there for starters from factory. So the differentials, put some extra oil in the shocks, stainless steel screws, shims, rings, rubbers, all over the drivetrain and in the steering mechanism and in the ball joints. Oh, what I did was I completely degreased the car, like all the parts. I put it in one big bucket with soap, because from factory all the parts felt a little bit greasy, and I don't like that, because that will attract dust, and when you work on a car you get greasy fingers, and I don't mind getting greasy fingers, but well, it doesn't have to be greasy, so then don't. So that's what I did with the car, and for the next step it is time to put in the electronics. I've got a nice second-hand TP power motor, 2200 kV on 8S. I've got a brand new XLX2, and I've got a brand new Savox servo, and I have got my CR6P Arrma remote and receiver. Receiver is somewhere, I'm not sure. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video. I enjoyed working on the car, and I am looking forward to put in all the electronics and then finally drive it.